Hey, I'm Jake, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be converting my Datsun from these twin SU style carbs to injection throttle bodies. Stick around to see how I get on. So these are the throttle bodies I've decided to go with for this project. I picked these up a little while ago. They've just been sat waiting for this project to roll around. They are Honda CBR600, I believe, throttles, 40mm diameter, with the injection, hopefully around about the right size for this engine. Probably slightly too big. I don't think I really need 40s, but it's hard to find anything a bit smaller than this. And should be plenty of power for any upgrades in the future. Yeah, injection, throttle bodies, fuel pressure regulator built in, some idle control gubbins, throttle position sensor. And yeah, I think first things first, I'm going to start on the manifold. I think once the manifold is done, then I can route the fuel lines and I can do the wiring will come last, I think. So yeah, let's make a start on what this manifold's going to look like.
Here we are up at the computer and this is where we're going to make a start. So I've got a gasket for the intake and exhaust on the head, got the throttle bodies, got some air filters, and I'm going to start with this end. So first job, I've already done it, but the first job in the process is to model up this here, which should look something like that. So that's what the intake manifold flange looks like. As you can see, you could just buy them online, but I am not paying £81 each from Torken, mainly because guaranteed they come from Z-Card Depot in the US. 2 of those is 160 quid and probably wouldn't be delivered for 6 weeks. So yeah, not wasting my money on that. Gonna make some. So yeah, is this area here. And by the magic of CAD, we've got these two. Basically just using a ruler, very nears, etc. Trace this. You can also import photos into CAD and draw around them, use them as a reference. But yeah, I just measured them up with a ruler. It's a pretty simple shape. And by the magic of hitting one button, that is what the intake manifold should look like. So you've got your flanges, 2 of them. These holes are spaced to match up with this side of these throttle bodies. As you can see, it's made with some straight sections that are sort of pie cut, and this is the plan. These are in 5 sections each. I did originally do 3, so sort of down, across and down. But I just didn't like how it looked. It's a bit more work, a bit more welding this way, but I think the overall product is a bit nicer. So yeah, next step, I think, is going to be to print off one of these flanges and test fit it on the spare engine in the garage. Actually, while I was up here, I couldn't be bothered to go back out to the garage, so I made a start on the other side. So that fits around this shape. As you might be able to see, it's quite thin, light goes straight through it. But yeah, this will bolt on like so. And to that section, I've done some little testers that basically fit in the end of here. Can't see it on camera, but nice fit to the outside there. This is a bit awkward. Let me assemble this and I'll show you. There we go, roughly assembled, which shows it better. Obviously I've printed this very thin for now just to save time. And these will eventually go whoop into little trumpets. Yeah, that's how I'm going to handle this side. So it's going to be one here, one there. And then these foam filters will fit over the trumpets. And as if by magic, here is what it's going to look like. So this is just PLA at the moment, so it's a mock-up. I'm not going to use these in the car because the stuff will melt, but it gets the point across. So I've got your trumpets there, but most of the details on this side. So we've got a groove that runs all the way around that fits onto here. We've got some vents into the center section here because on these throttle bodies, this is where the idle air goes. And yeah, seems to fit together quite nicely. And I'll need both hands, but I'll just fit the air filter quickly so you can see what that looks like as well. And here we have the air filter on. So I put a little lip around here quite close to the end, so the sort of bell mouth bit's about here. That stops these filters from sliding up and down. I used to have some similar ones on some side draft Webers on my old Nova, And what used to happen is the whole filter used to slide down towards the carb, and if the foam on this end basically sits on top of the bell mouth, it really restricts the flow. So by adding in that little lip here, means these things are fairly secure. I could probably lift this up. So yeah, not going anywhere. Oh, there you go. So yeah, I think as a mock-up, it's looking pretty good. And what I'm going to do is get back to what I was doing originally when I started some CAD work, which was the intake manifold flanges that I've got open here. So yeah, like I did for this, I'm going to print something out quite thin to start with, just so I can mock up to make sure these holes are in the right place before committing to. I'll probably do a full scale print out before I cut any metal, just to make sure I'm 100% happy. But yeah, 3D printing is very good for this sort of stuff. So I've got those other mock-up pieces here. These take like 10 minutes to print. This thing here in the middle is quite big, so printing it thin definitely saves a lot of time. 3D printers are great. So here we have one of the initial templates for the intake flange, 3D printed, a couple layers thick, just so I can print it quickly. I have test fitted this on the spare engine, and the holes all look to be in the right place. So what I'm doing now is I've roughly sort of squared out around this flange, ×2, and I'm going to cut them out using this thing. Seems to be pretty good at cutting through aluminium, so we'll give it a go. So currently I'm just draining the coolant down here, you can hear it. And then I'm going to whip this intake off. So air filter, carbs, manifold. Probably just get the air filter off to get it out of the way because it takes a bit of space, and then just try and take the whole manifold and carbs off together. And then we can have a look at whether my 3D printed template fits or not. So removing the manifold on these cars is pretty easy. I'll start by removing the fuel hoses along with the hose for the breather and the vacuum line that goes to the brake booster. And after that, the only thing left is just to remove the manifold bolts. So yeah, pretty straightforward on these cars. Doesn't take too long at all. So yeah, here we have the intake manifold off. It's still connected by the choke cables. Mainly because before I finish this project, I'm probably going to put these back on and drive the car. And adjusting those choke cables and stuff takes longer than basically the rest of this removal and refitting. So I didn't really want to do that. But anyway, here's the 3D printed sort of thin template. Here are the ports. This one seems to fit quite nicely. So all the holes just in general really line up. Compared to the current manifold, it's a little bit bigger. Let's see if I can show it. It sort of overlaps the sides by a couple of mil, sort of 2 mil in places, maybe 3 mil in some areas. But generally, I think the shape that it currently is fine. I think the only area I'll adjust is just down the bottom here to give a bit more clearance to this exhaust manifold. Just because it is quite close. I wouldn't want it sort of butting on the exhaust manifold and then not bolting up properly. So yeah, I think I'll raise the bottom surface by 2-3 mil and print off a full 1/2 inch thickness one, just so I can test it, put the bolts in the holes, make sure I'm happy with it before I start cutting some metal. Yeah, that's where we are. Also got a mini water dripped out of the manifold. I think because the previous owner had like siliconed up these holes in the head that the coolant comes out of. So whatever had squeezed past that into the manifold didn't drain back out when I've drained the coolant. But yeah, making progress. So while I've got everything in this state, I figured I might as well take a look and see what this is starting to look like. And I think that's looking pretty good. So it's going to be about there. I think that's perpendicular to the head. I might raise it up slightly about there, just to give myself a bit more clearance from the throttle bodies and stuff to the exhaust. But yeah, looking pretty good, I think. So what we have here is the 3D printed template, block of aluminium I cut out previously. These are the same thickness. So I'm going to cut this shape out of this piece of metal. Well, not quite this one because the holes, doesn't really show up on camera, but this hole is too close to the center. So I printed another one. It's not the full thickness to save some time, but the holes are in the right place. So yeah, happy with the shape of this one. So in order to aid me cutting this out, I printed another one. So this one's only got 3 mil center holes, which basically will allow me to drill the holes in this block before I cut out the outline. So 3 mil holes, poke some of these with a pillar drill. As I go, I'll thread some old drill bits in. So drill one hole, drill bit in, do the next one, another drill bit. I've got a couple of these, which will allow me to get all of the centers of these holes in the right place, which is basically key to making this thing fit properly. So let's get to it. So now after using our little template, we've got lots of sort of nice accurately sized and drilled holes. Obviously I've not gone all the way through yet. I'll just whip this template off. And we've got our 6 pilot holes. So obviously these big ones in the center are going to be 35 mil. I'll cut those with a hole saw. These 4 are to suit M8 studs. So I'll go for 8 mil to start with. Might need to open them up to 8.2 or something to clear the studs, but we'll go for 8 mil. Aim for the best we can and go from there. Before I drilled the larger holes, while this one was pinned in place, I just went around it with a blade and marked the outline. I figured going from this when it's still pinned in place is probably the most accurate way of marking that. Although to be fair, the outside profile doesn't matter too much. If it's off by a mil or 3, it's going to be fine. So if you don't have a 3D printer and still want to make some accurate templates, this is a method I use quite often. So what I do is I will design it in CAD, whatever CAD software you have and you're okay with. Make a drawing like this. You can normally export them in PDF format. Chuck a couple of dimensions on. I normally go for the largest dimensions. This gives you the smallest margin of error. And then you basically print it out to scale. So the PDF will normally have an option saying to scale rather than fit to page. And then what you can do is you can measure across these distances and make sure they match the distances in the software. So 90.2 mil for this one, 106.9 for that one. And you just measure those, and once you've checked a few dimensions and you're sure that this is actually to scale, you can sort of cut these out and use them as templates. Okay, and I've not used it in this case, I've used 3D prints, but This is a method I've used in the past and it works quite well. Breaking news just in. I am an idiot. So, drilling out some holes on this thing. Gradually stepped up in size. Got to do the 8mm holes for these and thought, oh, wait, these don't need to be 8mm. These need to be centre holes for this thing. It's got a drill bit in the middle. Centre hole. Drill out a hole big enough. 35mm. And I've drilled these centre holes too big. So the centre hole on this thing is 6mm. And I got to 7mm. And then when I was drilling the 8, I was like, wait a minute. I'm hoping this thing will still go down nicely. I mean, it's not going to be perfectly central, but so it's only about a mil oversized. And as soon as this starts cutting, it will center itself on the outside. Just a little bit annoying, I didn't remember one size down on centre holes, really. So I started drilling these holes in the pillar drill using the 35mm hole saw, but I found that the pillar drill kept stalling because it's not really strong enough. Also made the mistake of using cutting fluid, so I had to clean that up. So yeah, drilled a little bit with the pillar drill, but it kept binding up. Due to the orientation, the chips kept getting stuck in the slot, so I then switched to mounting this in the vise and using a handheld drill, which went through quite nicely. Obviously a bit less controlled than a pillar drill, but at least the drill had enough power to get through. And yeah, just repeat the same process on the other hole, starting with the pillar drill to get the hole established and then moving on to the hand drill in the vise. So there we have all the holes poked in this first one. So 8mm holes around the outside for the bolts, which all fit quite nicely, and big holes drilled with the hole saw. I think the only thing I'm not 100% happy about so far is the size of these holes. So the hole saw should have been 35mm, but these holes have actually turned out more like 36 or just over. Whether that's because of the extra play in the centre hole on this first one, I'll see when I do the second one, because I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, I hope. So yeah, overall not too bad, just that these holes might not be perfectly matched to the port on the head. The head might be a tiny bit smaller, but to be fair, the side where it's broke through on the bottom here is slightly smaller diameter, so I'll keep that side towards the head, and hopefully it's okay. But before I can fit this to the engine, I need to trim the sides off. Probably don't need to get it perfectly to the right shape, but I certainly need to take off the bits that will share space with the exhaust manifold.
So here's the first look at the roughly shaped flange, and it's pretty much spot on. So ports line up pretty well. I was worried to be a little bit oversized, but they're actually not too bad. All the bolt holes absolutely spot on as well. These aren't tight, but this ain't going anywhere. Yeah, pretty happy with that. Now I'm happy with this one. What do I want to do? I'm going to give up for tonight, but I might get the other one to the same stage first, or I might finish shaping the outside of this one first. Not decided yet. I'll sleep on it and continue tomorrow. So there we have the outside of this flange, all tidied up, nice and smooth. Yeah, it's looking pretty decent, I think. So I didn't film it, but to do the outside, I basically just use an angle grinder with a flat wheel on it to take the sharp corners off, and then I've got a little belt sander that I use just to smooth it off a little bit. Yeah, pretty happy with how that's looking. I didn't film anything, but here we are, a short while later, definitely quicker the second time round, and as you can see, I've got the phone on the floor. Here we are, and I've just finished up the second flange, a lot quicker this time round. I didn't bother filming anything. Figured you saw the method the first time round, basically just did exactly the same thing again. So yeah, 2 intake flanges done. They look pretty good, I think. So after finishing off the flanges, I gave them a quick brush with a stainless wheel, these jobbies, that I saved purely for aluminium. And I've tacked on the outer runners, mainly because these are just sort of like single pieces. They're not quite exactly parallel, because this distance from here to here is a little bit smaller than from here to there. So they're a little bit angled. But still, yeah, tacked it up, pretty happy with it. I can count on one hand the number of times I've welded aluminium, so I'm not expecting to be very good at this, but I've managed to get it to stick, which is good. Yeah, it wasn't the easiest. I did try welding without the gas on at one point, which obviously went terribly. And yeah, they are stuck together. So what I'm going to do before I carry on is basically take them off this mock-up engine and stick them in the car. Not for any purpose other than I just want to see what it looks like. So here is the first proper mock-up of where these throttle bodies are actually going to sit in this car. Like I said, I've tack welded on the outer runners, bolted everything up. Got a little bit of clearance over here, so that's fine. I think height-wise they're fine as well. It's between the sort of strut tops and the top of the engine, so it's about as high as you can go without worrying about the bonnet. So yeah, very happy with how this is looking so far. Welding aluminium is 100% not a strong point of mine, so I'm not expecting these welds to be particularly pretty, but as long as they hold and do the job, that'll be good enough for me for now. I've got my shopping list of bits of tube to cut, my length of tube, the old chop saw, and this is going to be the starting of the runners that come through here and here. So yeah, I'm going to start cutting. First on the shopping list are some pieces that look a bit like this, sort of traditional pie cut shape, and how I'm doing this is I've set this to 9 degrees, which is what I want, and I've cut the end off this one, which is just there. So I've done one cut, I've measured the length I want and basically put this clamp in place, then I make the second cut and you can see that I've flipped this round, so that will give me this shape. And then what you do once you've done that cut, you'll then have an angled cut like this. Don't worry, the saw's off. Angled cut like this, you'll flip that 180 degrees, which will put it in the same orientation as what I've currently got. Move it up to the stop, make another cut. Repeat that 4 times, and I should have 4 identical pieces like this first one. So in a turn of events that will surprise absolutely nobody, I am an idiot, and like I said, I cut these 4 pieces before, and they didn't fit. Well, not exactly the way I planned anyway. So I did originally plan to have like sort of 2 pie cuts here, this end piece and another pie cut, and then a straight section in the middle. I think it's dirty. But that basically just didn't work out. Went back and checked the CAD model, and yeah, it turns out I had these runner lengths quite a bit longer than what they actually are. They're about 20mm longer than what I've got in reality. Honestly, I'm not sure where that discrepancy came from. I think I might have maybe cut these too short, but the model was longer than I had originally intended. Maybe it was something to do with the fact that I'd started from the back of the flange in the model, but then obviously in reality you start from this side. That's half an inch, and then I don't know. Anyway, I messed it up. Cut some metal, was running out, so I've resorted back to the 3D printer to print a little section here, and this is what I'm going to end up with. It's not quite as smooth as I would like, but it's not terrible. And once I finish welding it up, I can always smooth the edges off and whatnot. But yeah, that will do for now. Now I'm happy with this piece, so that's literally just held with friction at the moment, just from me pushing on these outer rubbers. It's holding it all in place. It's pretty good. There's basically no gap, a fraction of a mil at most. So yeah, I'm going to cut one of these out of metal and hopefully
start sticking this together.
Just doing a little bit of filing on one of these runners, and I thought I'd show you a little tip I do. So I'm just filing the end of this down. I want to take down sort of fairly even amounts. What I've done is I've just notched it using the file. Quite often just use the edge of this, but anything to notch it really. And if you do all your notches to the same height, then when you're filing it down, you know when you've reached the same distance. Avoids you sort of filing it off on a wobble or anything. So after plenty of cutting and filing and stuff, this is where we are. So I've got the inner runners tacked up and in place now. I've just finished filing them all down so they're the same length. So yeah, they're all bottomed out in these rubber bushings. Yeah, looking pretty good. So these aren't tacked to the flanges yet. I think what I'm going to do is weld these up around the whole way just so I can get into here. It's pretty tight. So yeah, I think I'll weld those runners up, or at least the words closest to the head. Tack them onto the flanges, and yeah, weld it up completely. So definitely getting towards, well, we're definitely more than halfway through. More welding coming up, which I'm sort of not looking forward to because I'm not very good at it, but it's a good learning exercise. Here we are after welding this one up. As you can see, I have not done a very good job, but it's stuck together. So I've not really welded much alley before. And just the fact that it's stuck together is good enough for me, I think. So yeah, next job will be stick them on the flanges. There we go, I've got the inner runners tacked in place. So this is how things can look. Pretty happy with how it's come out so far. I mean, the welds aren't the best, but I'm an idiot who doesn't know what I'm doing, so if you've got any tips, let me know in the comments. But yeah, getting there. Just need to take this off again and fully weld around the base of each runner, and then that's intake manifold done. Actually, no, it's not done. What I do is once I've finished, I'm going to get the die grinder out and finish grinding out the holes inside the flanges, just to match the pipes, because the holes are a little bit undersized versus the pipes, which is good because it basically allows you a little bit of wiggle room, and then I'll just basically port it out to match the tubing. Yeah, very much getting there, most of the way done, I think. Here we have the intake manifolds, plural, welded up. Not overly happy with them. My aluminium welding definitely needs a lot of practice, but I think they're probably strong enough. Right, they're not. It's not the worst, they're stuck together. They look alright. They're going to work. But yeah, not massively happy with the welding. Need a bit of practice, I think. Especially these bits in the middle here, they're a right ball ache to do. Just that bit and that bit probably took as long as the rest of the welding combined. But yeah, we got there in the end. Here's the manifold in place now. Sort of all finished up from manifold perspective.
Just going to finish off another set of these trumpets to put on this side. Some that I printed out of ASA, and then we'll be able to take a look at sort of what it's actually going to look like. Obviously, I've mentioned before, I think this one's PLA, so I'll replace that. But yeah, it's looking pretty good, I think. So I need to glue these ASA trumpets into this part. This stuff's all going to be under quite a lot of temperature, I think, in the car. So how I'm going to glue it together is I'm going to use this ASA slurry I've made. So it's basically just acetone mixed with bits of ASA. ABS is exactly the same. Acetone dissolves it. I'll basically smear this around and it will actually melt the plastic and bond them together. So yeah, it's quite good. And it basically just means you've covered the area and effectively the plastic it is. If that makes sense. So once it dries, it's like it's a single piece. So I'm just going to smear a load on here. Again, not an interesting process to watch, I'm sure, but quite useful if you ever want to glue ASA parts together. Again, yeah, works the same for ABS as well. And I'll just leave those to dry for a bit. ASA trumpets all glued up and in place. So yeah, this is how it's going to look. Overall, pretty happy with this. Yeah, pretty much come out as I expected it to. So I finished the manifold and the trumpets, well, one half anyway, just need to print the others. And this is where I'm going to leave it for today's video. Hope you've enjoyed and stick around for the next couple of parts, which should see me finish off this injection conversion. I've still got the fuel system to sort out, as well as wiring, initial mapping, etc, etc. A bit left to do, but we're getting there. I guess in theory this is the second part of this, so the original part will be the spark only conversion that I did last year. Check that video out if you haven't already, and yeah, I guess this is the second part. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye. If you've stuck around this long, here's a sneak preview of what will be coming up in a future video. So yeah, shiny new wheel lips. 4 of them. Won't be the next video, but get there eventually. Catch you in the next one.